On this episode of Over the Hump, we dive deep into the wrestling program and one of the magicians behind growing the social media presence, Josiah Hritsko. I'm Evan Budrovich, really breaking down what makes Campbell Wrestling unique. Josiah, you're 1 year in working with both Coach Kerry Colad and now Scotty Sentes running the program. But the Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter growth of this program has kind of mirrored the growth of the team in general, not only becoming a top 25 team, but starting to get major traction on social media. What were some of your goals initially when you came to Campbell about growing the brand, and what have you liked seeing in this last 12 or so months?
Sure. It's been so exciting to be here, Evan, as a part of the program. And there's just been a lot of change in the past years that I've been here. A lot of good change, a lot of different change. But with initially getting straight into the program, first I had to I knew a little bit about the program and the background of it coming into Campbell Wrestling. Initially I moved from PA down to North Carolina, so that was a little bit of a change there. But then getting really engrossed in the program and understanding what that was all about, I think that was the first biggest thing to just kind of understand myself. But then in order to push it out, I wanted to just grow those numbers as much as I can by getting out the different type of content that I know that wrestling fans enjoyed. And I wanted to get these Campbell wrestlers out in front of a lot of the rest of the wrestling world. And of course, they made a huge name for themselves just in this past year. And they've been growing so phenomenally as a program under Coach Colat in the past 5-6 years. And that was a huge help in the past year, of course, with some great wins, some great individuals in this past season. That was a part of that growth and part of my goals in growing that in the past year.
Josiah, I'm always curious because, social media is one thing, but results are another. What was those discussions like with Colad and Scotty, obviously, when you have multiple All-Americans qualifying this year and the team is winning and becoming top 25? Is it pretty easy to get in the door and say, Coach, how do I grow this program from my standpoint?
Yeah, so the nice thing is under Coach Colat and under Scotty now, they kind of give me a lot of freedom to push out what I want. They love to see what exactly I'm going to push out there and what we can do. But then there's a lot of freedom in this position, which is nice. Now, the other thing that you kind of mentioned is, a lot of these accolades that these guys have produced in the past year and in past seasons. And they kind of don't like to, it's two different sets. Some part of it is they want to be able to market all these great guys, but they also don't want to have these guys get too big of a head and kind of make it get into their own head on the mat. And it hasn't, in the past year. But this is just something that they kind of like to monitor as well. So that kind of goes into it as well. Not only the individual guys and the things that they've accomplished and their tournament wins and things, but also with, team rankings, which has obviously been a huge factor in the past year with Campbell finally getting into those team rankings, which has been such a great part for the program and has gotten the program a lot of recognition. So I think there's a lot of good things about those team rankings, but then also you don't want to get too much ahead of yourself. And that's kind of where the team is.
Josiah, from a marketing standpoint, obviously so much of your role is promoting current players, but I'm fascinated by the recruits and the prospects that these coaches are getting after, because one of the things that they do a great job of sharing, and you're a big part of that, is recruiting graphics and videos showing the best pins and takedowns from these kids when they're, 17 years old. What's been the reaction from the fan base about learning more about these kids before they even step foot on campus?
I think it's huge to be able to understand the stories and the backgrounds of the wrestlers, not only these incoming recruits, which it's so great. This past year, we've had a top 10 incoming class of freshmen, which has been, just great to be able to get that out in front of people. It's great to be able to market that. But the fans, the Campbell Wrestling fans, and even the general wrestling audience likes to know these stories of these guys, because you can start getting these connections with certain guys from Florida or from Michigan or from Pennsylvania. Because if you are a Pennsylvania wrestler or a Florida wrestler or Michigan or wherever you're from, and you see these guys that these guys from PA and wherever, from the state tournament that are doing well in national rankings or wherever it may be. And when you see that, okay, they're going to Campbell now, And you kind of get, as far as, high school wrestlers, that's one part that they get to see. And now they get a little bit of a connection to Campbell, and they can start diving into the pages there and understanding more about the program. But as far as, the kind of older generation, whether my age or older, the parents, they like to know about who is coming into this program. Why are these coaches bringing these recruits in here? And when you start seeing those great pins, those great tournament victories that these guys have, these young guys, they start to get excited about the program, and then momentum really starts to grow in the fan base. And there's just a lot of chatter, a lot of talk on the internet about how great the incoming class is.
What's unique in your role too, Josiah? Obviously, you work so close to the team, but you get to kind of parallel with us from the marketing standpoint of marketing the university and the athletic programs. But from a wrestling standpoint, I'm always curious, what has been not only the reaction, but kind of the feedback you're getting of the growth of the program and an alumni base that, while not necessarily you don't see them all the time here on campus, they're very vocal and they're very willing to generate donations and things of that nature.
Yeah, our alumni base is phenomenal. We have interactions with them really on a weekly basis, just talking to them, whether it's me reaching out to them to find out something more about a past team for an article, which is actually something I'm working on right now, is to learn more about the past Campbell wrestling history, which that's just something I personally enjoy, is learning about the past teams and what Campbell had before I got here, and before Coach Kolak got here, and before Scotty was a coach, and all these different things that in the past. And they really enjoy those interactions. And that's something that has been built up really recently in the past 5, 6, 7 years, is this alumni base really getting excited about the program. And they can obviously get more excited about the program when the program is winning, when the program is doing great things, which has been great. And one of the great events that has happened in the past few years is the Orange and Black. And whenever all the alumni come back into town, and they come back for the wrestle off, and they get to, it's just buddy. They get to reminisce about the good old days of Campbell, and just being able to, nurture those relationships and understand more about what these guys went through at Campbell, because it was a very different time when they were here. They always talk about, this little wrestling room that it was like one mat, and there was like no AC, and there was just like it was a lot different than this beautiful facility that is on campus now. And when these alumni come back into town to see that, they just get so more excited for the program, and they just get excited about, wanting to give back to the program that gave so much to them.
Josiah, I know you're a wrestling addict. As someone who wrestled in high school, went to Penn State, obviously a fantastic program from that standpoint, and supporting the team and whatnot. I'm curious kind of your background in the sport and what keeps you motivated to want to work in wrestling and kind of give back in these ways.
So I've been wrestling for pretty much my whole life, growing up through grade school all the way up until high school. And I was lucky enough to be on a great high school team, one of the greatest programs in Pennsylvania wrestling, and just being a part of wrestling my entire life. My high school has a long history, a long tradition of wrestling, almost 100 years worth. So I was kind of doing things back then with the wrestling program to help grow even my high school team. So once I went to college, I didn't wrestle in college. I made the decision not to wrestle in college and focus on some other things. But I still, being at Penn State, being around that environment was another exciting wrestling environment, just like at Campbell, which is, a great fan base of wrestling fans. And so I would go to the matches pretty much every single week that I was able to. And I just loved, cheering on the team. But then I kind of, to transition, I guess, a little bit, is I started helping out, like I mentioned, my high school team. So I decided it was their 90th anniversary as a program, and I kind of started marketing that to the local Western Pennsylvania region. Started making articles. I built a website. I started looking at all the old statistics and the whole tradition of the program. And I just did that, in my free time, just for fun. And that's something that kind of made me, although I was kind of out of, I guess, wrestling for a couple years, it kind of brought me back into the sport and got me more excited, and realized that I could tie in my marketing degree to something that I really loved, which was wrestling. And that kind of, over time, then once Cole, I kind of found out about that once we kind of got those conversations going. And once I saw that there was an opening at Campbell, it brought me to this great wrestling program, which I knew was has been on the rise for a couple of years. And now I was able to take those things that I enjoy doing just in my free time and actually make it my job, which is just, it's so great to be able to come to a job that I enjoy every single day.
And finally, Josiah, you also have your own blog with Fanco Wrestling YouTube channel, things of that nature, where you're covering every team, not just Campbell, but across Division I college athletics. So I'm curious from your standpoint, what's it like to be working at a program like Campbell that is climbing in the top rankings, getting kids qualified for nationals, but also having that national perspective and scope where you have an insider status into the college wrestling scene?
It's very interesting to kind of combine the two because I have that kind of inside coverage at Campbell and getting to know exactly the behind the scenes of what's going on in D1 wrestling. But I also can't, share everything on a public platform all the time, which is a little bit different. I like to on my YouTube channel, which has grown, great in the past year. It's something I do in my free time just for fun, and being able to interact with these wrestling fans, and they want to know everything. And on there, I like to interact as if I am a wrestling fan, which is exactly what I am. I although I am in the wrestling world, although I have a job in wrestling with the wrestling team, I'm still a fan at heart. And I like to have those discussions with other wrestling fans. And, sometimes they're always kind of wanting a little bit more info, give a little bit more info, Josiah, but I can't always give that away. But I still think that a lot of those wrestling fans enjoy that perspective from me coming from, being able to work with such a great wrestling team, not only in the SoCon, but in D1 wrestling and in the NCAA. And I love those interactions.
Well, Josiah, if we're looking to find you, look at Go Camels Wrestle, because that's the place you'll be more times than not. Appreciate the insight. Obviously, great to work with here at Campbell, and it's a pleasure to talk with you and get to know about you a little more.
Thank you very much. I had a great time talking. I appreciate the discussion, and go Camels.